This happened about 5 years ago, and it was such a terrifying night. My family and I lived in a very rural area during this time, very small town, and our house was outside of the town by about 15 miles. Our closest neighbor was about a 7-minute drive away, and our road was pretty overgrown and hard to find, so naturally we didn't get a lot of accidental visitors. It was about 11 at night when my mom, brother, and I arrived home from traveling to the bigger city about an hour away. My dad was on a business trip and hadn't been home for several days. As we pulled up to our house, the headlights shined into the yard where we kept an outdoor table. My heart jumped because my bike was on top of that table, not where I had left it. My mom and brother thought it was weird, but we parked and got out anyway. It was dark on the porch, and I stumbled on something as we got to the front door. Once the porch light turned on, we realized that the roofing tiles that had been in the boxes were all out, meticulously arranged in different patterns. I got such a cold and uneasy feeling. My mom and brother were clearly freaked out at this point. Someone had clearly been there. We opened the front door, and this was when I knew we had to go. I always keep my bedroom door shut, and it was wide open. We all booked it back to the car and called my neighbor, asking if we could come over. As we pulled out of the driveway, our lights illuminated our laundry line. My brother's bike was hanging from the wires. We all screamed, and my mom slammed the gas as we left. When we got to the neighbor's house, we called the police, who showed up and searched our entire property. We also had a barn and a chicken coop. They didn't find anyone. We spent the night at our neighbor's house and went home the next morning. We found even more things inside the house. My bedroom door was open, and someone had opened all my drawers and placed food inside. Cat food in my underwear drawer and cereal with my pants. They had put canned goods inside the refrigerator and had opened all other cabinet drawers inside the house. Movies had been taken out and rearranged in more patterns like the tiles. As far as we could tell, nothing had been taken, just things rearranged in a seemingly random way. A few weeks went by and nothing came of it. We were all really creeped out knowing that someone had been into our home and touched our things. It was almost creepier that they hadn't robbed us at all. They had just been through our belongings. We found out who had done it a few months later. My dad's friend had been at a no-talking Buddhist retreat for 3 years and had just gotten out. With no phone or email, he had stopped by to see us. When he found no one was home, he, for some reason, thought it would be funny to do the little rearranging stunt. It still creeps me out to this day and was a very weird incident. So, it was Christmas break. It was a pretty snowy night. I had just finished my dinner an hour ago and my parents were asleep early. Me and a few of my buddies were just on a Discord call, chatting, talking, or playing some online games together, when one of my friends, I think he was called Ian, said he heard something upstairs, and then, BANG! That loud sound was heard from Ian's mic. He said he'd go upstairs to check it out. His parents were away and he was a single child. A minute passed and me and my friends heard Ian rushing down the stairs back to his PC. I'll always remember what he said that night. Chris, Larry, Dominic, it was a pleasure knowing you. Ian then quit the call. He was never seen or heard from again. A few summers back, I worked at a camp that was nearly 100 years old. The camp served adults and kids with varying levels of ability of all ages, and was really the highlight of many of the campers' lives. Campers and workers alike joked that the place was haunted, but I had thought it was just one of those funny camp legends to mess with the campers and share around the campfire. As a camp leader, I had my own room in an old cabin, and I shared a bathroom with one of the other leaders who lived on the other separate half of the cabin. One night, I was up late dealing with a camper that was having a meltdown. Around midnight, I had finally gotten her to sleep and was trekking back to my own cabin when thunder roared loudly. I sprinted the rest of the way, and as soon as I hit the door, it started pouring. I realized at this moment that I still had my walkie-talkie on me. Usually we charge them on the main office at night, but I decided not to run into the storm, so I turned the walkie-talkie off and set it on my dresser. Shortly after that, I went to bed. I awoke around 3 a.m. to what felt like someone poking my leg. I was really confused by the sensation. I opened my eyes and looked down at my leg under the sheet where I had felt the poke and saw nothing. I tried to go back to sleep, but a few seconds later I felt it more aggressively and on a larger scale, as if a whole hand had wrapped around my calf, and I sat up in fear. As I sat up, my walkie-talkie across the room lit up and beeped, something that could only happen if someone physically turned the side dial and pressed a button. The walkie-talkie stayed on. I was paralyzed in fear. Eventually, I got up and turned it off and turned on the room's lights. I checked and no one was in the room or under my bed or in the closet. There was no objects that could have caused the poking. To this day, it still makes me feel tight-chested thinking about it. This was back in high school after prom during my senior year. Being the young and energetic teenagers we were, we of course decided to go to one of those big prom after parties. After a quick change of clothes, we headed to the bonfire party where we each enjoyed our fair share of debauchery. Lots of alcohol was drank and lots of weed was smoked. As the party died down and beginning to feel fatigued from the long night, I asked my buddy to give me a lift home. He drives me home, we say our goodbyes, and I watch him pull down the driveway. Remembering my mom had said she left the back door unlocked for me, I headed to the back porch where I took a quick piss and smoked a cigarette. While there, I contemplated my high school years and the fun times I had. I flicked the remainder of my cigarette and headed inside, locking the door behind me immediately. Seconds later, I dropped my phone and wallet on the bar when all of a sudden the door behind me began to rumble loudly. The doorknob was twisting and turning violently and the door was shaking non-stop. I froze, paralyzed in fear, not fully understanding what was happening. I stood there and simply kept watching the door as the rumbling just kept going as if someone was trying to break in. It seemed to go on forever. When it finally stopped, I called my mom into the room, turned on the back porch light, and peeked through the blinds. I saw nothing, but heard the barks of our dogs. My mother called her boyfriend and he came over to inspect around the house, finding nothing out of the ordinary. This is the scariest moment of my life. Not knowing what would have happened if I didn't lock that door immediately, or if it even happened at all and if I simply drank or smoked too much. The only thing I know was real was the intense fear that left me hopelessly motionless.